Hi, I'm Gareth Green, and in this video we're going to be thinking about a challenge that some composers find they have. And it's about when you get to a point in a piece of music when you're dealing with a slow theme. Now that's something that quite often happens. It may well be that it started life as a faster theme, and then you've got to a point in the music where you decide to use a technique called augmentation, where the rhythm of each note becomes longer. Therefore, the notes of the theme get more spaced out, and then you've got to think, oh, now what can I do around this to kind of make it work? Now, in a way, when you've got lots of parts going, it's easier to kind of hide a slow moving theme, or if you don't want to hide it, to let it be coming through nice and clear, but you've got lots of movement going on in other parts. So I've set myself the challenge of just doing this in two parts, because actually in a way it's slightly harder to do it in two parts, but it also just draws out a few things that I think would be helpful. So what I've done here is to take a slow moving theme that everybody will know. And it's this, and it's in the left hand in this score, because we all know a tune called Happy Birthday to You. That's as far as I've gone with that particular melody. Now, what I've done with it here is to set it all in long notes. So you can see that we've got Happy birthday to you, and so on. So it's just going in long notes. You'll also notice, actually, I've done something else which may well happen during the course of a composition, that even though I've got Happy Birthday to You pitched in such a way that would normally belong to the key of F major, I'm using it here in the key of C major. So it was just demonstrating another thing you can do. To take a melody that maybe started life in one key, now you're going to use it in long notes, but relating it to a different key. You don't have to do that. It's just showing that additional possibility. So we set the melody and slower moving rhythm. And this has got a very long history, because this little technique that I've highlighted here called Cantus Firmus takes us back a very long way. So most people are kind of reasonably happy about their history of music sort of in general terms back to the Baroque period. But before that, the Renaissance period, where often people are writing with long notes as a Cantus Firmus with other things going on around it. It even goes back a little earlier than that as well. But it's a technique that hung around. So in the Baroque period, you quite often find things like the chorale preludes that were being written for the organ in the church, where the hymn tune melody might be played slowly on one keyboard, while in the other keyboard and the pedals, there's much faster stuff going on around it. And this carries on, not necessarily called Cantus Firmus, but this is the origin of the technique. But you go even into the 19th century symphonic repertoire and beyond, and sometimes you've got slow moving melodies with lots of embellishment going on around it. And really that has its roots right back in the Cantus Firmus technique. So it's a kind of good thing to know about, something you might want to research a bit further if you're interested in it. I'm not looking at it here from a historical perspective as much as something very practical. So let's have a look at what we've got. We've got the Happy Birthday tune in the left hand running in slow moving notes, 3 beats on each note. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now what I'm trying to do around that is to write something in the right hand that turns that very slow moving ponderous theme into something much more lively. So one very obvious thing I can do is to use faster rhythm and to have something that maybe is just sort of a bit busier, a bit motivic, that's got much more kind of interest, particularly in the movement, but has also got a kind of melodic life of its own that maybe has got nothing much to do with the original theme, but actually sits on its own quite happily. So if I play the right hand now, you can hear what's happening in the rhythm, and you can hear that it's got a melodic life. and so on. Now, if you heard that on its own, you would think, yeah, well, there's a melodic line. You like it, you don't like it, but it's got a shape, it's got a direction. It seems that as if this could be a theme of its own. And as you hear it, you don't think, oh, that reminds me of Happy Birthday to You. It's got actually melodically very little to do with it. So see what we're doing? We're kind of writing another melody as a kind of counterpoint to this Cantus Firmus setting of the Happy Birthday to You tune. So let me play the two hands combined and just see if you can hear Happy Birthday going on slowly in the left hand while this independent melody is going on in the right hand, but that the two things actually fit each other harmonically. And so on. So you see how that actually combines together. Now, the interesting thing is that probably your ear is more tuned into the right-hand melody because it's more florid, you've got more kind of rhythmic character in the right hand, it's nice and busy, and these long notes in the left hand just sound like a sort of simple bass line that you might find in a relatively elementary piano piece, for example. But actually, the main theme is in the left hand being used in these long notes as a Cantus Firmus. So hopefully you can hear what an interesting technique it is for a composer working today to think, well, if I've explored a theme, how could I use it later on in the piece? Well, one idea is to use it in these slow notes as a Cantus Firmus and then to build other lines around it. Well, you have to make sure this is all going to work harmonically. It's no good writing a second part above a Cantus Firmus that doesn't kind of fit with the harmony of the Cantus Firmus. And remember, it's the Cantus Firmus that's fixed. You can't change that. I can't change the Happy Birthday melody. If it was your own melody, well, of course, you could be a bit freer with it. But I'm purposely taking something that's fixed that I can't change. But if we just quickly look through how I've done this, well, when you look at the first bar, the first measure, it's looking like chord 1. We're in C major in this particular corner, aren't we? So it's chord 1. So that's obviously a note that's at the root of the harmony. That's a harmony note. The F is a passing note. The G is a harmony note. In the second measure, we're still using chord 1. Harmony notes, upper auxiliary or an upper neighbour tone, harmony, passing note or passing tone, harmony. So you see how all these notes belong to the prevailing harmony. When the melody moves on to D, I'm treating this basically as a sort of D minor chord initially anyway. So D, F, A, so it's a kind of sort of chord 2. So this is harmony, passing, harmony, passing, harmony. Now you might wonder, well, what's going on here? It's just the suggestion by the end of the bar that really we've started life as chord 2, a D minor chord, and we've finished it as a 5/7 in second inversion. So therefore, these are both harmony notes. There's an implied change of harmony. And then I'm back to chord 1 again, and harmony, passing, harmony. So you see, all the notes can be justified as harmony notes, chord tones, or as passing notes, passing tones, or auxiliary notes, neighbour tones. And therefore you get the opportunity to kind of run around with scales and things. So when you see a measure like this, for example, a bar like this, you've just got this C, this chord 1, and you can run down a scale by simply going harmony or a chord tone, passing, harmony, passing, passing, harmony. You can have two passing notes or passing tones next door to each other if one is accented and one is unaccented. So that's how that one works. But you see, it gives me a lovely kind of scale run, which is one of the ingredients of this thing. You can do things like just simple idea, repeating notes. And you see how I've managed to sort of do that repeated note figure in sequence here. So that kind of strengthens the melodic identity of the upper part. So the important thing is to make this work. You don't just write an upper part that fills out the chord and doesn't really have any melodic life of its own. You know, if you did something like this, it wouldn't be terribly exciting, would it? Because actually the right hand is just sort of writing a fairly simple accompaniment to the left hand melody moving slowly. So you have to do a bit more than that when you're using a melody as a cantus firmus with these long notes. The other part, or the other parts, need to have a bit of kind of melodic independence. So it's almost like fusing two melodic ideas together where they're independent of each other, but at the same time they fit each other harmonically, assuming you're writing in a diatonic style. But it's a very interesting technique to develop as a way of being able to use your theme in this rhythmic augmentation, while presenting it in slow moving notes while you do something else around it. And it's also a very good way, if you want to, of kind of concealing your original theme, the happy birthday thing in this case, and just doing something else, but that theme is still just tucking away in a sort of underlying way before perhaps it comes a bit more prominent later in the composition again. So how does it all fit together? I mean, the other things you can do, it's going to be profoundly affected by tempo, dynamics and so on. You could do this quite quickly, you could do it much slower, but this is kind of what it all comes out as. And so on. So there we are. Hopefully that will be a useful additional piece of thinking if you're a composer wanting to find new ways of developing ideas. And also, just as a general introduction to the notion of cantus firmus that's been with us for hundreds of years. Well, if you've enjoyed this video, let me invite you to the Music Matters website, www.mmcourses.co.uk. And lots of courses there. You just click on courses on the homepage, you'll find them. If you've been listening to this thinking, hang on a minute, what's all this about passing notes and auxiliary notes and not quite sure what all this is about, you might find it helpful to look at our theory courses. We've got 8 levels of theory, grades 1 to 8, and we've got them bundled up as well, so you can get levels 1 to 5, or you can get 6 to 8, or you can get the whole course 1 to 8, and the bundles come with discounts. So if you're really wanting to know actually what is all this stuff about, it's time I really got to the bottom of it, have a look at our theory courses. www.mmcourses.co.uk.